evil is back. The Drool King Lotor has returned with a dark energy that can destroy the galaxy. Our only hope? The Voltron Force, a team of 5 heroic pilots that control 5 awesome robot lions. When Lotor's monstrous road beasts attack, the lions come together to form Voltron, defender of the universe.
Oh, let's Voltron! Oh, let's Voltron! Oh, let's Voltron!
Welcome, Voltron fans. This is another exciting episode of Let's Voltron, the official Voltron podcast. And I have my co-host here with me, Greg Tyler. Welcome, Greg.
Well, hello, Mark Morrell. How are you?
Excited about a few things that are happening in Voltron.
Such as?
Well, we heard from the Voltron store just recently that pajama pants are coming.
Oh, yeah. So as I joked on my personal Facebook page, the Walmart shoppers of the planet Eris will finally have proper dress code.
That's right. You can now wear Voltron pajama pants to Walmart, right?
Woohoo! This is not an official endorsement of Walmart, by the way. But if the Voltron store had a brick and mortar physical retail space, then by golly, you'd be allowed to wear them there.
Yeah, but for those people who already had like Rick and Morty, South Park, and other types of pajama pants, well, now coming soon to the Voltron store, you'll be able to have Voltron pajama pants.
That's right. And even if you never wear pajama pants for reasons that we don't need to know about, you can start now with Voltron.
Another cool item, of course, that they have on the Voltron store coming soon from 3.0, Robo DOU Voltron. It's another collectible Voltron, and it's about $299, but you can get on at the Voltron store for only $25 deposit.
Yep. And that one looks really nice. It kind of looks like a sort of a hybrid between the Soul of Chogokin and the larger Blitzwave version that was also available for pre-order a while back.
Right.
So.
That Blitzwave, $699, and they recently had it on display at WonderCon.
That would be neat to see in person.
Right.
I remember when I first saw the Soul of Chogokin back in 2016 at New York Comic Con. That was the one year that I went there.
Right.
Back with you and Kim and everyone.
Yeah.
And man, that thing was a sight to see.
I mean, it's always nice to see a Voltron of any kind at the large conventions.
Mm-hmm.
And the one year they had that snap together one that you could get from what was that blue
Was it
Bluefin?
Bluefin? Yes.
Yeah, it was Bluefin.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So it's always good, and of course, way back they had the sideshow collectible big statue Voltron. That was always a good one.
Yeah, and you're able to look at that whenever you feel like it, aren't you?
Yeah. So that's pretty much why I'm not getting the Blitzwave Voltron. That's just a little above the price range right now.
Yeah, I actually have a slight bit of personal sad news when it comes to Voltron collectibles. Today, I was inspecting my Matty Collector Voltron, and I realized that one of the ankle joints had cracked.
Oh, no.
I know. It's only about 10 years old, so I'm pretty bummed about it. The Blue Lion is, of the 5 lions, the Blue Lion seems to be the one that has the most problems over time. And that Blue Lion has a little flip-down panel from the underside of the chest that makes kind of a heel. Mm-hmm. And the plastic surrounding one side of that hinge has cracked, so the little ankle flippy flops around. So I got to figure out how to stand him up. So it's kind of a bummer. I really like that one. But,
you might have to go to the 4 lion version of Voltron that we had from our last episode review.
Think funny thoughts. Yeah, so it's a bit of a bummer, but I'm sure we'll figure something out, at least to have him stand again with maybe a gigantic doll stand. Who knows? But there you go.
Yeah.
So what else is going on?
So those are some exciting things coming for Voltron.
Yep. So if you want, you could get pajamas, and they'd be a little large. You could put them on that 3-0 Robo Dow, Robo DOU Voltron if you wanted. That could be a thing.
Yeah, I think they mentioned the sizes that will be available for the pajama pants is small all the way up to 3X.
All right. I can still afford to increase my pizza intake. And, although I probably shouldn't. Anyway. No. Yeah. So we also have an episode review going on tonight, right?
Yes, we do. It's a very pivotal one, don't you think?
Yeah, it is in a lot of ways.
I mean, there's a lot of big changes that'll happen as a result of this episode.
Yeah. It's unique. I mean, it's one of those. The show has a few high stakes, high tension, high action episodes. And it's sadly only one season. We're talking about Voltron Force, by the way, and this is one of them. It's Clash of the Lions. So
yeah, this is episode 113, and in this episode, at the beginning, they're actually referencing the previous episode.
Yeah, and before we get into the actual plot, this was written by Brandon Sawyer. I neglected to jot down the story credit, but of course the story credit, story editor throughout is Todd Garfield, right?
Yeah, and the story on this one was Todd and Jeremy Corey.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah.
Directed as always by John Delaney, and featuring a rather full cast.
Yes.
So in addition to the regulars, Ashley Ball as Allura, Doran Bell Jr. as Vince, Shannon Shanken as Larmina, Andrew Francis as Lance, Ron Halder as Karan, Giles Patton as Keith, Ty Olson as Hunk, Vincent Tong as Daniel, and Sam Vincent as Pidge. We have additional voice actors and some of our regulars doing additional voices. So Gary Chalk returns as Sky Marshall Wade and Manset. We have Sam. I'm sorry.
Who does the ghost of Alfor?
I was just about to get to that. And 2 extra voices by Sam Vincent, in addition to Pidge, as I'd already mentioned. He also plays King Alfor and Chief Callan of the Lion Riders. So it's a full cast and a lot of characters.
Yeah. This is always nice when you get all those coming back all in one episode.
Yeah, these are all returning characters. No new characters in this episode, but it has some payoff and development for some of them. So
right. So we're starting off. The setting here is Wade's office. Now, of course, you're talking about Wade's office at the Galaxy Alliance headquarters on Earth. Okay. So he's dressing himself in a military uniform. He's affixing medals, ribbons, sliding on gloves, all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, he's watching some footage of some Voltron stuff going on. And he's talking to himself, but it doesn't look like he's really talking to himself. It looks like he's talking to his pet lion. Right?
Yep. The lion with the 2 differently colored eyes. Yes.
Now, this whole thing, as he does his little, monologue, he does it the whole time talking to the lion. But the original script that we have here makes it sound like there was originally someone that he was going to be speaking to on screen.
Yeah.
And it never happened that way. It was more the lion he was talking to. Because the lion was walking around as he was speaking.
Right.
So the way he's talking, he's talking about the Voltron Force, how they're the knights in shining armor. They're smug, self-righteous, and they're confident that Voltron's going to save them every time. And then he wonders what actually gave them the right to pilot Voltron in the first place. So he thinks the whole Voltron thing was just handed to them, right? That they didn't earn it. And he says that every piece of metal that he wears on his uniform is something he earned. And that any weapon he fires, he designed it. So who decided that they get to be the knights in shining armor? And he says that there is a downside to that people of honor always have the same weakness. and that they just can't stand it when someone fights dishonorably, which is what Wade did in the last episode.
And in prior ones, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's comparing himself to the Voltron Force as, you know, this was handed to them. I've earned everything. They're honorable, and I'm dishonorable. I mean, I like the idea of him having this, something where he's made himself who he is. But I think him going into dishonorable and stating that as a really good characteristic as he's talking to himself, seems it's a very cartoony comment there. The rest of it I can buy into, but that little bit there's kind of it's like in the old He-Man and the Masters of the Universe when Skeletor would talk about, but I like being evil. You know.
Yeah. So when he says that they don't like it when someone fights dishonorably, he says, I expect they'll be showing up anytime now and will be ready. So his whole point of doing what he did in the last episode was so that he would get them all fired up to go after him.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of that, the pet lion roars, and that's the end of the teaser, and we go right into the theme song.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's a very short and to the point teaser.
Yeah. So then when you come back, we're going to start Act 1, and this time we're in the Castle of Lions control room, and everybody's like on these, these monitors and everything. And remember, the way these guys operate, these are all like holograms. They're holograms, right?
It's those floating, touch-sensitive, touch screen, hologram, Minority Report style user interfaces. Yep. Right.
So Keith's doing something, Lance is doing something, Hunk's doing something, Pidge is doing something, right?
Yeah.
And so Keith wants Pidge to get structural analysis of the Alliance compound, all of Wade's defensive capabilities. Lance says to Hunk to make sure that the Lions have the firepower to punch through all of it. And Lance says to the cadets, no more training runs. This time we're hitting Wade where he lives, literally. And then Keith says, well, when the sun comes up tomorrow, I want it to rise on a planet under the rightful control of the Galaxy Alliance and not Wade. And then Alora comes in and she's like, oh, please. She said, don't pretend this is some kind of noble revolution. This assault on Wade is personal, not political. And Keith says, you better believe it's personal. He tried to take you out.
Really?
Yeah.
Of course, this is a refresher for the audience, of course.
Right. But when he says he tried to take you out, he says that instead of he tried to kill you.
Right.
Because this is for TVY7, right?
Sure. But one thing that's kind of funny is, oh, this is personal. You bet it's personal. He tried to take you out. And I'm thinking, then shouldn't Allura take it personally? Why are you taking this personally? Oh, well.
Yeah. Any kid might have said, did he mean he wanted to take her out on a date?
Or
no, I don't think so.
Ball game. Yeah.
Yeah. So Lance says he's dangerous, Allura. You know we have to stop him sooner or later. I'm voting sooner. So both Keith and Lance are in agreement on this.
Yeah, that's
which
kind
is
of a rarity.
Yeah, isn't that? And Allura notices that right away too. She says, as much as I'm thrilled to see you two finally in agreement over something, this is not what we do. Voltron is the defender of the universe. We protect, we don't assault, and certainly not for revenge.
Let's see. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. And yet the title of that film was originally Revenge of the Jedi. Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I remember that because when they made those Revenge of the Jedi patches, and I had one of those.
Yeah.
It a lot of people asked about that. And then George Lucas himself said, I went back to what Jedi are all about, and they're not about revenge. They're not about attack.
They're about returning. One of the YouTube channels I enjoy watching is Red Letter Media, and they have these videos where they kind of rail against some of the Star Wars productions with their character Mr. Plinkett. And he was sort of joking about George Lucas. The real reason for the title change is so he could save like $3 in manufacturing costs of all the merchandise, because it's one letter shorter.
Okay. Well, Lance gets back to her and he says, well, that's too bad because this party's going on with or without you. So at this point, wow, you're willing to do this even without Allura.
Yeah,
and
that's
then,
kind of odd.
And then she tries to go after him. And then we see a shift over to the cadets where Daniel starts thinking about something. So one thing that struck me about this was we go into this part where the cadets start talking. And then we're going to get to a part where Karan shows up.
Right.
And as they're all talking, then it goes back to Allura and Lance and Keith. To me, this whole thing feels different. It feels like we're in a different room almost. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the control room is a large room.
Right.
But it ain't that large. I mean,
right.
Especially when three of the people that, Keith, Lance, and Allura are not exactly talking very calmly.
Right. And then all of a sudden, it just struck me as a little bit, I kind of got sideswiped.
Yeah.
So Daniel starts saying, I thought Wade was supposed to be some sort of military genius. And he says, I mean, what's with the stupid tactics? And then Vince says, what are you talking about? He says he pretty much runs the galaxy. Couldn't he call up like a massive army and just fling them all at the Castle of Lions, totally crush us? But instead he's going head to head with Voltron, and he's got a giant robot obsession. Okay. Then you see Karan walk in. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, yes, he always has, for as long as I've known him, at least. So Karan wasn't there at all. All of a sudden he's there. And then Larmina says, wait, you never told me you had a history with Wade. So now we're going back to the whole Aris connection with Larmina, Allura, and Karan.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a part of Karan that Larmina doesn't know about.
Yes.
Okay. He says, I took history with Wade and quantum mathematics, tactical theory, hand-to-hand combat, everything the GA Flight Academy offered. So now we're going into a little history with Wade and Karan. Don't you think that would have come up at some point?
Such as when
Before
Wade
this
had captured Karan in the very earliest episodes?
I'm just,
yes.
What?
Yeah.
How can you introduce a backstory between Karan and Wade this late in the game?
And does this ever pay off after this episode in any substantial way?
I don't think so.
No, it's pretty much a throwaway. And frankly, this marks it's like, oh, here's some backstory, which we'll get into, but it's never spoken of again, as far as I can recall. It doesn't, and it also kind of, in this episode, and seemingly only in this episode, it gives Wade a different motivation. I mean, he flat out told the Voltron Force he was all about money and power in earlier episodes.
Yeah.
And so maybe he's too embarrassed or whatever to admit that a lion rejected him. And clearly he has an obsession with the lions in the sense that he was doing experiments on Black Lion and built those mechanical lions and all that junk. But none of, to me, it's like he just wants machinery. He just wants a war machine, and what better things to mimic or replicate than Voltron.
Right.
This gives him a different edge that he didn't have before, and he really doesn't act on ever again, which is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, before it was all about keeping Voltron out of commission, right?
Mhm.
So that
Yeah.
so that he could run the Galaxy Alliance and everything, and that there was no defender of the universe but Wade's Galaxy Alliance, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And this whole thing with wanting to get back control of Voltron wasn't really one of his motivations, right?
Right. I mean, he could have commandeered Voltron during the several year gap between when Voltron the Lions were trapped on Eris or whatever, and
Yeah.
the first episode of Voltron Force. I mean, he had years, literally years of opportunity to do this.
But he was only doing it with Black Lion.
Yeah.
And that's
even
what
then, as far as we know, it was dormant and was just being, looked at and examined.
right.
So,
But it may be where he learned some of his information about the stuff that he's going to do later in this episode.
very true. Yeah.
So this whole history with Karan and Wade. So
Mhm.
they were both in the academy together, but their real dream together was to attract the attention of the Voltron Force. Now, who was the Voltron Force when Karan and Wade were younger?
Well, it doesn't, we know that there have been past generations, but we don't know, were they based on Eris? Were they based elsewhere? We know nothing about this generation of the Voltron Force. So
Right.
it's a mystery. And I kind of like that, actually.
Yeah, because
But
we
it-
know
Yeah, go ahead.
we know Karan is like probably, I don't know, at maybe almost twice as old as the Voltron Force members are now, right?
Yeah, so let's assume that he's 60, which may be young
Yeah,
for him. I mean, he does look like Mark Twain after all.
right. Right. But let's just say him and Wade are around the same age.
Yeah.
Both him and Wade definitely look older,
Hmm.
but they're still physical, people that can still do a lot of things. But
Sure.
we still see them as probably almost twice as old as the regular Voltron Force members like Keith and Pidge and Hunk and Lance, right?
Right.
So who would have been those Voltron Force members they were trying to impress when they were in the academy?
Yeah.
We don't know. They never bring that up again.
Well, I mean, there's a lot about the Voltron narrative we don't know in this show, and in many of the others. Let's be frank. But let's go back in time. Let's assume that Wade and Karan are about 60. Let's assume, just for nice round numbers, they were roughly 20 when they were in the academy together. Now we see that Vince and Daniel were maybe 15, if that, 14, 15 when they were in the academy. Let's just round number 20.
Right.
There's a 40-year gap. That's enough for 2 generations of the Voltron Force, give or take. Maybe more, because who knows how quick pilots turn around.
Yeah, I'm just thinking whatever the generation was before these guys.
Yeah. And so other mysteries are, how do these pilots typically transition from generation to generation? It's still, the big mystery is, if the broad strokes of the original show from the 80s, the broad strokes, I'm not talking every little detail, but if the broad strokes still give you a rough idea of how the Voltron pilots in this series got where they got, it still does not paint a picture of what happened to the prior generation. I mean, what was that gap like? So there's still a lot of mystery, even in the recent history of Voltron.
And if this is the way that they bring new Voltron Force members, by taking cadets from the academy, or people that they see as having, possibilities and stuff like that, like, how did they know Vince was special? How did they know Daniel was special? Larmina, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then why only 3? If
It's a very good point.
If we know, certain people are going to be replaced, why wouldn't all 5 get replaced?
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah, many mysteries.
Lots of things to think about in the stuff that's going on here.
Yeah, and I have one more question that I'll ask after we spin through this backstory.
Okay, so Karan and Wade had pushed themselves to excel. practically daring the Force not to notice them. And when they finally did, there was no doubt we'd be invited to join them. But call it one of Voltron's many mysteries, the Lions seem to sense who is worthy to pilot them.
That sounds an awful lot like what we would later hear in Voltron Legendary Defender.
That's correct. But didn't we also get a sense that the Lions were a little bit sentient even back to Voltron the Third Dimension?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And of course, the Devil's Due comics of the early to mid 2000s too. So yeah.
Yes, the Dan Jolly comics.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's been this idea that the Lions are sentient in some way, and that in particular in this one, that the Lions have an idea who's worthy to pilot them.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently Wade was not, and he was rejected by the Black Lion. And then he spent his life building his own war machine, desperate to prove he was better than the defender of the universe. So as a result of that, he immediately, felt spite towards Voltron. And then ever since, he's wanted to be better than Voltron. Right?
Yeah. He has a really weird way of showing that.
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking about the stuff that he did afterward. I mean, again, he had Voltron under his thumb for years leading up to the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
So it doesn't quite add up. But my big question about this backstory is, Karan and Wade were certain that the Voltron Force would pick them. They rejected Wade. What about Karan?
Well, he never became a pilot, but well, we don't know.
Exactly.
we just sort of feel like maybe he got involved with Allura at that point, because maybe Allura had just been born or something like that, and then he got involved with the royal family on Eris or something with King Alfor somehow.
Yeah.
He's the ambassador for Eris now.
Right.
So,
and he does not seem like the soldier type or pilot type at all.
Right.
I mean, he's always so la 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 la, even keeled and prim and proper.
Seems like a diplomat.
He does.
I
he doesn't seem like pilot material. Although apparently back in the day he was. Who knows?
So, at the end of that little backstory, all of a sudden we go back to Allura. She takes off her Voltcom, slams it down on the table, and says, "Go on. If you're going to do this with or without me, then it's without me." Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And then Keith says, "Larmina and Daniel, that means you've got blue. Vince, hop a ride with Pidge. We scramble in 15.
Although that's only in the script. The
Right.
scramble in 15 isn't. In the episode, they're off. I mean, they just leave.
Yeah.
So Keith never got any of the information he asked his fellow pilots to give him. It's like, look at the struck technical analysis, the weapons, out of heck with it. Let's just go. I mean,
So we watched the 5 Lions launch from the castle with Allura and Karan watching. And Karan puts his arm on her shoulder. And she just seems dejected that they left without her. That they were going to go do this, and it wasn't the way, that she thought Voltron was.
Right.
So then we see we're on Earth now. And as they're coming down, Keith says, "Keep it tight and keep your eyes open. Wade has to know we're coming." And then, of course, Wade shows up on the monitor saying, "I would have been disappointed if you didn't." So Lance says, "Shut him up, Pidge. I don't want to hear anything from Wade, but ow."
I do like that.
But then Pidge says, "He's on an open channel. I suggest you just ignore him because he's not going away."
So they can't turn off their radio?
Yeah, I don't get that.
I mean,
how can you not just turn off your monitor? But
so Yeah,
But
I mean,
Lance
we all
gets
have
so
phones. You can hang up.
yeah, Lance gets so angry he punches his monitor till it breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Now, if you, it's dramatic and all, but from watching the show, this is the only monitor in the Lion in the front seat, the pilot seat, that is close to the pilot's head. There are all these little itty bitty little technical readouts off to the sides and here and there, but this is the one. It's on the yoke,
Yeah.
the handles that they yank on when they fly around, and he destroys the one monitor because he doesn't want to hear Wade.
That means he hates Wade so much that he's willing to give up and risk not being able to talk to his own people.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Yeah.
So Wade promises that he has some surprises for these guys. And Keith says, keep smiling, you psychopath. It makes your teeth an easier target.
I do like that. That's fun dialogue. I love that.
So at this point, we get ready to board Voltron. And when they say, let's go Voltron Force, there's a split screen. This split screen has Vince and Pidge in one window. Then Lance gets his own, Hunk gets his own, Keith gets his own, Daniel gets his own, and Larmina gets her own. Wouldn't Daniel and Larmina be together?
I gotta look that up. That's actually I gotta check that out myself.
Because I would have thought Daniel and Larmina would have been in blue.
Yeah, that's odd.
So I don't know why Daniel got his own when they could have done another one just with Larmina in the front and Daniel in the back, kind of thing.
Well, presumably that's what happened here. Front back.
But they got their own part of the split screen, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they got there's 6 panels there.
Yeah.
6 different that is odd. I did not notice that.
I just thought it was odd because Vince is sitting right next to Pidge. And if they're both in blue together, then why wouldn't they have just a panel that has both of them together the same way? It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that really is odd.
Okay. So
yeah, that's weird. Okay.
so they form Voltron, and Voltron just basically lands on the I guess the sidewalk or whatever outside of the main compound, right?
Yes. Did you notice the major change between the formation sequence in this episode from every prior episode?
Well, what do you mean?
This is the first episode that uses the 1980s Voltron theme.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that. Yes.
That's all right.
That's right.
And they use it from this. Yeah, they use it from this point through the end of the series.
Yes.
And doggone it, I love the one that they made for this show. But as an old fart who loves the 80s show, this one really gets the spine tingling or chill, the spine chilling, that sort of thing going.
Okay. So what we see is some large hangar doors slide slowly open, and Wade walks out wearing a strange wired suit. He's all alone. He doesn't seem fazed that Voltron's standing outside his door. And he just walks right up to them. And without a word, he reaches behind his back, pulls out some kind of high-tech rifle or shotgun.
Yeah.
And then you see the cockpit shots of Keith and Lance. Their eyes are widening. Wade aims the weapon, and Keith yells, "Move!"
I love the tight close-up on Keith's eyes, his face, especially his eyes when he tells them to move. Of course, no one moves. Lance is probably like, did somebody say something?
They certainly didn't move enough because they got hit square in the chest with his shot.
Yeah, it hits Voltron right in the center of the chest insignia.
Yeah.
And pierces the insignia.
Right. And then he says, "A single charge of corite metal dug from the heart of the planet Ariel. I hope you're surprised now." Because they all felt the shaking as it plunged into them.
Mhm.
But then Voltron convulses and folds up, and all the lion mouths open and discharge their pilots. Now here's another thing. If you're in the Black Lion, you're way up there.
Yeah.
And if you're in the Red Lion or even the Green Lion, you're still pretty far up there.
Mm-hmm.
When you get discharged, you're dropping to a concrete ground.
Yes. So in Legendary Defender, when in the Rise of Voltron, when Lance ejects Hunk out of Blue Lion's mouth so that he can go underground and recover the Yellow Lion, remember how he rolls, he hits the ground hard and rolls. I remember thinking in that entire episode, oh my gosh, that's gotta hurt. That is nothing compared to what these guys are going through.
These guys got ejected from a massive height.
Yeah, I mean, if so, in that Voltron 30th anniversary book, they suggest that Voltron, in some pages it says about 200 feet, some about 300 feet. It's inconsistent from area to area, but whatever that height is, that's really, really high in the sky.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way Keith, above all of them,
Mhm.
would have been able to just like brush that off. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, so let's imagine that Voltron's 200 feet tall, the shorter of the two heights
Yeah,
from the 30th anniversary book. If each story in a building is about 10 feet, given the structure between the levels,
yeah,
he's 20 floors up.
yeah. And he fell
Yeah.
and he hit the
Whoops.
ground
Yes.
and he was fine.
Mm-hmm.
A little shaken up, but fine.
Yeah. Just a nasty bump in the pride.
Boy, I'd love to be a cartoon.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, couldn't he at least have made a puff of smoke and been flat and then, straighten himself back up again like Wile E. Coyote?
Yeah.
Yeah. This was, I love the action in this episode, but that bit right there took me completely out of the story the very first time I saw the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So while they're trying to recover from the fall,
Mhm.
and
why would a bullet throw them out of the lions? Oh, well.
well, we're going to find out. So Wade fires a wire line from some sort of like from his glove into Black Lion's mouth, and he's able to pull himself up, sort of just the same way that Batman does with his grappling hook.
Mhm.
And Hunk says, "Oh no," and Pitch says, "What?" So through Black Lion's mouth, he connects wires into the cockpit and everything. And now there's a face, like a hologram face of him showing up in Voltron's face.
Mhm. So the face had withdrawn to allow the Black Lion to spit out Keith. It's still withdrawn. It's folded into wherever the face goes. And yeah, a holographic face now appears where Voltron's face would have been.
And as that happens, Wade's saying, "And I'll form the head."
Now you got to admit that's a heck of a way to end Act One. That's
Yeah.
a heck of a cliffhanger.
Well, yeah, it's like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
How did Wade take over Voltron with just one shot?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that stuff. I mean, that was an amazing bit, and I thought it was really ironic that I remember watching this the first time thinking, "Whoa, the '80s Voltron music is here," and then they land, and almost immediately Wade takes out the entire force.
Yeah. That quickly.
Yeah.
So his first thing to say in Act Two is, "Life lesson, rookies. You don't move up in this world by accepting rejection. When they tell you no, you can't have it. Well, you just find a way to take it." So Wade swings a punch into the ground, and they all try to jump out of the way, and they get thrown by the punch. They get thrown by the force of the punch.
Yeah, and Voltron is basically mimicking Wade's movements, and so we already had very early in the episode in the series, Wade had that remote control booth that was in his office that he was using to control his giant robotic lion way back in the first episodes. This is the next generation of that, seemingly, and it reminds me of the 1980s movie Robot Jocks. Do you remember that? Where and of course Pacific Rim did much the same thing, where the robot would mimic the movements of the people inside.
Right. And Larmina had a similar thing with her little bot that she put together in the Hunkyard.
Yeah, the awesome Tron vehicle that she had. Right.
Yeah. So so there you go. He's swinging a punch at them, and he says, "I've always told the people Voltron was a menace. Time to show them what I was talking about." So now he's not even focusing on these guys after taking a punch at them. He wants to go and make Voltron look like the bad guy to everybody on Earth now.
Well, it's ironic that he wants Voltron to look like the bad guy, but Voltron looks like Wade.
Yeah, exactly. So Larmina says, "How's he doing that? Karan told us Voltron rejected him." And then Lance said, "Pidge, I really need you to say something scientific right now." And Pidge says, I got nothing. So all of a sudden, Vince gets this look in his eye, and he just goes after Voltron as he's walking away.
I love that, by the way. This is a nice follow-on to the episode Dark Blue, where Vince, he's got his courage about him. He knows what the right thing is to do, and he's just doing it. He's got the unique ability to do to interface with computers and with Voltron, and he's just doing it.
Right. So this is a big step for Vince, because he didn't used to be like that, but he's gained confidence in his abilities, and they're all like, "What are you doing? Whoa, Vince." So he jumps up on Blue Lion's foot, and he starts tapping into Voltron just to see if he can figure out what's going on. So what does he see?
He sees there's something inside of Voltron that has been as I recall, it's what we will. It's the I don't want to use the word that they haven't introduced yet in the show, but it's those 5 crystal shards that we see come together every single time Voltron is formed in this show.
Right, but the bullet pierced something in that chest area there.
Right.
And he gets to see where it happened in Voltron.
Yep.
So Wade feels him, I guess, on his leg or whatever, and he says, no free rides, and he kicks him off. And then Larmina and Daniel come, and Daniel says, "You madman, just so you know, I mean that in a good way." And Pidge says to him, "What did you see? Any ideas on how to stop Wade?" And Wade has this huge laugh, and he says, "Me, I'd be more worried about how you're going to stop them." And then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of robotic lions and his main lion show up, and now they've got to fight them.
Yep, and by main lion, you mean his pet lion. The pet lion is he's basically controlling them through a similar control suit. Isn't the lion doing that?
Yeah. At the beginning of the episode, he wasn't wearing anything, right?
Right.
Now he's got sort of his own little suit on.
Right.
So the mechanical lions and this other lion are going after them, and they're, doing all their fancy fighting and everything with their Volt comms and stuff. In the same instance, Vince says, "Wade's moving towards the people. He's the one we have to stop. The lions are just a distraction." And as he's doing that, one of the lions comes after him, but Daniel rolls him out of the way. And then Daniel says, "Maybe you should pay a little bit more attention to the distraction."
Yeah. So this scene, actually, I don't remember if it's this exact scene or a combination of this scene and later scenes, because this show and Legendary Defender, to be frank, tried to minimize the interaction of 2D and 3D elements.
Yeah.
Because that takes special care to do. I do think the action here between the Voltron Force and the robotic lions suffers a little bit from that, because there are some shots where the camera pans left and you see the pilots in like these animation loops using their weapons to fire blasters, or Pidge keeps throwing his smart stars over and over and over again, like on a loop. And then they pan to the right, and then the lions are doing what they're doing. There's a little bit too much of this back and forth, and it lacks the dynamic quality that I think it could have had if they could have put a little bit more money into this episode.
Plus, it didn't have the fight choreographic stuff, the fight choreography that Joaquim Dos Santos had from Voltron Legendary Defender.
That is true. That's very true.
Yeah. Okay, so at one point while they're fighting the lions, Keith and Lance back up into each other, and Keith says he played us. He knew we'd come after him for Allura, and we walked right into it. And then Lance says, so which one of us has to tell her she was right? Lance says, we need her, Keith, and anybody she can run up. And then Vincent Daniels stand back up, and they overheard the conversation, and they have an idea. You know, they look at each other and they both get the same idea.
And I have to say, I love that they didn't spell it out Captain Obvious style.
Right.
You know, they could have been, ooh, round up people. We have an idea. Let's go round up people. You know, I'm glad they didn't do that.
Right. So Daniel says, we'll be back. And Keith says, what? Flight Academy building? That's Wade Central. Larmina, back them up. So basically all three cadets are away now. And Pidge says, and there goes half our strength. And he says to Lance, tell me you don't do this stuff on purpose just to make it more exciting. That was one of my favorite lines.
Yeah.
So Keith, as he's fighting these mechanical lions, he's trying to call Allura on the Voltcom.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, come on, Allura. And she's not answering because she has her Voltcom off, and she's talking to her father.
Yeah, so this is also kind of interesting. Number one, it's amusing to hear the Voltcom ringing like a phone. It would be funny if it was, you know, hi, you've reached the Voltcom of Princess Allura. I'm not here, but if you leave a message, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks. And then have little nice squeaks, and then, you know.
That would have been funny.
Oh, yeah. But here's the other thing. If the situation is so dire that you need Allura and you can't reach her, couldn't they have called the castle itself? Yes, very often it seems like the only people who are ever at the castle are the Voltron Force and Karan. It would be nice if there was an automated something, like, don't they have like people who answer their phone off hours, or Karan?
I was
just at the castle.
I know. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Allura said she wasn't going to help them,
Mm-hmm.
but Karan didn't say that.
Yeah.
Why don't they call Karan?
Mm-hmm. I mean,
So-
he might have been a pilot for all we know. He could have flown the Blue Lion.
I don't know, but Karan would have seemed like the logical choice. It's like, hey, Karan, I know Allura is not going to help us, but what can you do for us, dude?
Right.
So anyway, she's talking in the catacombs to King Alfor's ghost.
Yep.
And she says, I feel like I've abandoned them, Father, but if I support this mission, won't I be abandoning the nature of Voltron itself? And King Alfor's ghost says, a difficult question, but perhaps you're missing the more fundamental one. What is the nature of Voltron? And Allura says, I've never questioned to defend the universe. And King Alfor's ghost says, this is the mission of Voltron, is to defend the universe. And it always will be. But the spirit of Voltron is forever evolving. And it seems the Defender, as well as the Force, is entering yet another period of change. So this is good information to have, right?
Yeah.
The mission of Voltron is to be the defender of the universe, but the spirit of Voltron is constantly evolving. Okay?
Whatever the spirit of Voltron actually is
Right.
also a mystery. But
Right.
yes, at least it's evolving.
All right. So then we go back to the Flight Academy building where Daniel, Vince, and Larmina are. They're in a hallway and everything's quiet. And Larmina says, I hate the quiet. Bad things always happen in the quiet. And then all of a sudden some Wade droids show up. And of course she says, called it. And Vince says, I've got this one.
I love this.
What does he do?
He basically jumps on top of two of the Wade droids. He's got 1 foot on each shoulder of a couple of Wade droids. He uses his finger wires, if you will, his
Mhm.
Voltcom ability, and basically he's holding them like reins, almost like he's pulling them along like puppets, much like Wade is doing with Voltron, by the way.
Right. Right.
And he's steering those droids into all the other droids and taking them all out from the two that he's commandeered.
Yeah.
And then he
And
finally draws them together. They slam into each other at the end, and they're all gone.
And Daniel and Larmina are like, whoa, because both of these guys had seen Larmina do this at one point, where she just jumped in and knocked out a whole bunch of Wade droids, and they were all like, whoa.
Yeah.
So the same thing now happening with Vince. Vince says there's a clear path that way. Come on, Daniel, we got to get that to that video game. Video game? Larmina says, what video game? Daniel says, we're good here. This is our old school, so we're on home turf. Go help the rest of the team. So we remember the video game that got them in touch with the people from Ariel to begin with.
Right. And now this is one of those unique episodes where a lot of times they don't touch in subtle ways on the continuity of this story throughout the season, but this is a fairly subtle thing.
Yeah.
It's one thing to reference it's one thing to say, now let's go to the den and call our buddies on the den computer. This is quite another thing. This is the video game and no context to this. This is really subtle if you haven't followed the season.
That's right. If this had been the first episode you saw, you'd be like, what are they talking about?
Yeah. And so Vince had described this early on in that episode where we became introduced to the Lion Riders of Ariel, that the game was a mechanism that Pidge had created to help Voltron and Voltron friendlies, allies, to interact in a covert way. So they're going to be doing something to reach out to some Voltron allies using this game, but they certainly don't spell it out.
Yeah, so this was from Lion Riders Return, which was episode 107.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so we're back outside. Wade says, you brought this on yourselves, you weak, pathetic children. You wanted Voltron? Well, here it is. He's actually going after the people.
Yeah.
And you see a family, and they're running away, and one of the parents turns to see that their one son fell down. But it's too late for them to do anything but watch. There's a tower that Wade had knocked over, and it's falling on top of him. But at the last moment, Hunk comes running up, throwing his Voltcom hammer into the tower, breaks the tower apart, then cradles the child like a human shield. And he's able to save the child. So the funny thing is the kid looks up to him and says, aren't you a Voltron pilot? And Hunk says, yeah, I'm still confused too.
But I think it's pretty clear here why the Lions rejected Wade and accepted Hunk and his pals as Voltron Force pilots.
Yeah.
They weren't handed Voltron. These our heroes are heroes, and the Lions knew it.
Even without the Lions, they're heroes. Yep. So Hunk gets back with the others. He says, he's trying to hurt civilians. We got to stop him now. Lance says, now that you've stated the obvious, anybody have an actual plan? And Keith says, forget stopping him. We can't even get near him. We've got to get these lions fighting as an organized unit, protecting him. I mean, he's got these lions fighting as an organized unit, protecting him. And Pidge says, whatever we do, I don't think we have much time to do it. Says, look at him. So far, Wade's been held back by his own inexperience, but he seems to be gaining more control by the minute. We have to get him out of Voltron before he figures out how to tap into more of its potential.
Mhm.
And at that moment, Wade pauses and the giant robot looks at its hands for a beat, turning them over to analyze them from all angles. Then suddenly a fist pulls a glowing whip out of the other. So instead of forming a blazing sword, he forms a glowing whip.
Which is a weapon we have never seen Voltron form in this show and never will again. So it's interesting that this might suggest the whole evolving Voltron thing. Maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, how each of the cadets had unlocked weapons of Voltron that had not been used before.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Hunk says, I think he just tapped something when he pulled out the whip.
Yeah.
And so he starts slapping the whip around, right, around the city's power station, setting off all kinds of explosions. And Wade says, and so the lions become the tamer. And then that's the end of Act 2. So we start off Act 3, and Wade has this crazed laughter. And nearby, Keith, Lance, Pidge, and Hunk are still caught up fighting those mechanical lions. And they're looking pretty battle-scarred themselves. And then you see Pidge gets hurt. And he yells. And then Hunk says, Pidge. So now Hunk's concerned for Pidge. So he goes after him. He says, you okay, buddy? And he says, all good. So Hunk has saved this little child, and now he's gone over and protected Pidge.
Yep. He's helping his little buddies.
Right. So they look to see more civilians are fleeing the Wade Voltron destruction.
I do want to point out something real quick that I just
Yeah.
thought of. I hadn't thought of this prior to just now. Hunk is he protects an innocent child. He is probably, of the people there on Earth now, if based on what we know of him from Defender of the Universe, this is a very in character thing for him to do. Not just because he's a hero, but he had a history in the original show of being kind to children.
Mhm.
I remember there had been an episode where he went to revisit some kids that he had known from his younger years at the academy. And
Yeah.
so this is a, whether it's intentional or just coincidence, it's fun that this is kind of a follow-on to some of the traits that he had back in the original show. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So we're back in the den where Vince and Daniel are.
Mhm.
And Daniel stands up from the computer terminal he's on, and he says, it's done, Vince, they'll be coming. But Vince is still remaining in his seat, and his fingertip wires are plugged into Pidge's computer. They are, right?
I believe so.
So Daniel says, hey, come on, the Force is alone out there. And Vince says, just one more minute, I'm inside Pidge's system. And then Daniel says, spy later, fighting now. But Vince says, no, I'm trying to sort out the data I've got from plugging into that Wade Voltron. I'm running counter comparisons with Pidge's Voltron schematics, trying to isolate any structural alterations to. Daniel says, please don't explain, just do it faster. So he plugs more finger links into the board and he keeps trying to do it faster. Then we're back out with Pidge again. So Pidge is throwing his smart stars, as you said before,
Mhm.
and they're deflecting off the lion's head. He's ready to throw more, and the lion turns to face Pidge, and it's a stare down, and Pidge says, that's right, I want you to look me right in the eye. And then you see Keith leap in from above, landing on the lion's back, then jabbing one of his Voltcom swords into a neck joint. And then Pidge says, mostly so you forget to look up. And then you see Keith leaps back off the lion. Hunk rolls in under the lion's head, popping up and then swinging his hammer into the hilt of Keith's embedded sword. So that's like the final blow.
Yeah. Good teamwork. I love it. I also love the, now, of course, they can do this because it's a robot lion. The destruction of the lion as they do it with these weapons. I just, to see them just overtly do that is kind of fun in this show.
Right. So Keith says 1 down, and then Lance says, we're still losing this fight, Keith. Wade's got us covered from every angle. And then Larmina comes in, and she destroyed one. And she says, sorry, evil robots, you know how it is. Hunk smiles, and he goes, yep. So Keith says, where are Daniel and Vince? And Larmina says, I think they had to go play video games in the den. Keith says, what? And Pitch says, I believe I know what they're doing. So then they look up in the sky and there's this huge transport ship coming into land. And then Keith says, that's one of Manset's ships. And Lance says, Manset, what's that smuggler smuggling here? And then as soon as you see the doors open up on the ship after it lands, all the lion riders start coming out on their lions.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
And Pitch says, I think Daniel and Vince just called in our backup. So Keith says hi to Callan. Callan says, Chief Callan says, this battle belongs to the lion riders now, my friends. The fight with Voltron is yours. That's weird to say, isn't it? The fight with Voltron?
Yeah.
That's just weird.
It is weird.
So Lance says, okay, so now we have to try to break our own robot. And Lance says, if it makes you feel any better, the robot's probably going to win. So back at the den, Daniel's feeling very urgent, and he says, Vince. And then Vince says, none of this makes sense. It had to be something in that Corite charge Wade shot into Voltron. And then you see the Wade Corite drill bullet entered Voltron's chest. Inside the chest, we see the drill pierce some of the internal box. And as it does, wires grow out of the bullet like a mechanical creeper vines flowing out in all directions. And now Vince says, he built his own nervous system. Daniel says, Vince. And then Vince says, the Corite, it grew an actual physical new skeleton inside Voltron, one that Wade can control.
That's pretty darn sophisticated.
Yeah, so how he knew how to do that, I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, there are things that the Voltron Force doesn't understand about their own lions, as we will discover more later in this season. But to be able to unleash all these nerves or whatever they are and have them extend all the way into Voltron's extremities and be able to manipulate the robot, that's quite something. It seems implausible, but that's part of what makes this episode fun. I think it's neat that the Voltron Force is fighting against Voltron. It's kind of
right.
Cool.
And Vince says, and if he put it in, we can take it out. And Daniel says, great. And how do we do that? So Vince starts thinking, he says, combine powers, and he plugs into Daniel's like Voltcom. And Daniel says, hey, and he's shocked. And then his claws pop out. And then they start to glow with Vince's power. And he starts going, and then outside we're going again. And then, so basically everybody's just hacking at the robot's base, right?
Which is hilarious.
Yeah, they're just basically hacking away.
I keep thinking of So I've watched Doctor Who dating all the way back to the 1960s, and there was an era where the Doctor was stuck on Earth, and so he had these allies. They're kind of a global military called UNIT, and whenever these monsters would invade the Earth, UNIT would always mobilize and fire their traditional firearms at the aliens, and they never hurt the aliens ever. It never stopped them from continuing to shoot at them, but it never hurt them at all. And it's just this just kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, it's sort of like Gulliver's Travels,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
So so Wade's holographic face looks down at them amused. He says, "Is that it? Come on. At least I knocked this thing down a time or two. Frankly, I feel embarrassed just watching you."
That is my favorite line in the entire episode.
So suddenly, like a flash, Daniel runs up, a power glowing blur on all fours with Vince on his back. And all the rest of them say, "What? Daniel? Whoa." And Vince jumps off of Daniel's back. And in the same motion, Daniel leaps into the air with glowing claws and tears into Voltron's chest, disappearing inside.
So that's what the script says. What he really does actually seems less plausible. Well, maybe less plausible. A little interesting. He jumps into the breach that is already in Voltron's chest insignia, but that hole is pretty darn small.
Yeah.
Now, Voltron's big, but I'd be surprised if any of them could actually fit their hand through that hole,
Yeah.
much less Daniel's entire body.
Yeah. When you figure that Corite bullet was the only thing that went through there, it didn't burst anything just outside where it went in. It just broke that part only that was the size of the bullet.
Yeah, I think this was.
So what we're saying is that bullet would have to be bigger than Daniel in order for him to be able to fit in there like that.
Yeah. So I think this is another case of limited budget where, it would have involved some 2D, 3D animation to show the chest hole getting a little larger. And this is one of those cases where that suffers. And at the end, when something else happens, which we'll get to, it stretches credibility there too. But
right. So immediately Larmina asks, "What did you guys do in there?" And then Vince doesn't take any time to explain. He just starts wiring into all the other people's Voltcoms, except for Larmina's. He doesn't touch Larmina's. And then he starts having that instinct, and all of a sudden you start seeing the Vince's power creeping up the skeleton that Wade had installed in Voltron, but it doesn't do anything on Blue Lion. So he's saying, "I can't reach Blue Lion." And then Larmina, she thinks, "Oh, because there's no Allura." And then Vince says, "We need Blue Lion." So he taps into hers, which activates the Blue Lion part. And then he says, "Time to take back Voltron." So it's at this point, Wade is now in pain. Everything's going haywire around him. And in an awesome moment of power, Voltron seems to be glowing from the inside when Daniel suddenly leaps out of the chest, tearing the bullet with the skeleton attached out with him.
Yeah, and this shot is neat to see. It's fun to see Daniel leaping out of a hole in Voltron with all that cabling or tethers or whatever they are. But this is that moment where credibility stretched a bit further than we even saw before, because not only is he not coming out of a hole that's big enough for him to come out of, he's jumping out of it and somehow has the momentum to tear all of those cables out of Voltron in a presumably non-destructive way. He's got enough momentum to yank them all out of the robot through the chest, even though they were deployed from the head.
Yeah.
Well, from the chest, I guess, but the head was certainly connected to them.
Well, don't forget, he's working through the combined powers of Vince and all the other people.
That's true. That's true. Good call. Good call.
Yep.
But yeah, it is a little weird to see.
But then what happens, the whole Wade hologram disappears from Voltron's face. Then the huge robot collapses. And the Force's Voltcom's power down. The wires retract back into Vince's fingertips. Vince drops to his knees, spent, catching his breath. And Pidge says, well, that was a different approach. And Vince says, explanations later. That was kind of hard. So then Wade starts struggling, trying to crawl out of the head. And then Keith steps down in front of him and says, hi, I'll be taking you into custody now. Then I suppose I'll need to let somebody official know that the Galaxy Alliance is now restored. We'll help you write your resignation letter if you're not feeling up to it. Lance says, short version, we win. And they both grab him. And Wade doesn't say anything. And then Chief Callan says, impressive work. Lance says, same to you. And he says, what are you going to do about that one? And he's pointing to Wade's pet lion. And Chief Callan says, he's merely confused, twisted by the darkness he was raised in. Give him the open plains of Ariel and a pride to run with, and he'll be a new lion. So that's good, right?
Yeah. So I guess the lion riders watch the dog whisperer or the lion whisperer.
Right.
Yeah. Very nice. Put it with the pack and it'll learn proper behavior.
Right. So that's good. And Lance says, okay, he's all yours. And then Hunk says, so anybody know how to get a broken giant robot back to Aris? And Manset says, I've got a few ideas. So Manset said, I'll even let you slide on the friends and family discount. And he gives a card to Keith. Keith says, business cards, Manset? Tell me the galaxy's best smuggler hasn't gone legit. And Manset says, anything, anywhere.
Nice. It's nice that Voltron's allies have come together like this. It's really cool.
So they're all back in the hangar on Aris.
Yeah, within the Castle of Lions, right?
Right. So we see all the lions are probably getting worked on by Pidge and Hunk and all them, right?
Actually, Voltron's lying on its back in the hangar. That's one big hangar. But anyway.
Yeah. So Keith and Lance are standing next to Alora, and they both looking at each other and wondering who's going to talk first. Well, Lance finally gets up the gumption and he says, I don't know if princesses get to do I told you so's, but... And then Alora looks at them and says, we do, but I'm not sure I get to take one. You left here to bring down Wade, and you did. The Galaxy Alliance is united once again. And then Keith says, yeah, but at what price? Did we do right by the big robot? And Alora says, honestly, I'm not as sure as I was when you left. The defender of the universe that I grew up with may not be the one the universe needs today. Voltron, I'm told, is forever evolving. So she doesn't tell them that it was King Alfor that told her that.
Mm-hmm.
But Pidge says, well, he'll be up and running again soon, but there's something else right here. And he points to the diagram, and there's a damaged part in that chest that we saw.
Mm-hmm.
And Pidge says, the Corite pierced something inside Voltron that we've never been able to crack before. And Vince says, yeah.
I like the way it's pierced something we weren't able to crack. Like, were you really trying to crack? I know what they mean, but it's just funny that they got the two words together there.
Yeah. So Vince says, yeah, what is that? I've been seeing it in I've been curious.
Why is he keeping that secret?
I don't know. I really don't know why. But anyway, Pidge says the lions each have one in their chest, like a heart/hard drive, I imagine, and they all come together when Voltron forms. And the diagram demonstrates that. And Vince says, kind of like a nexus. Pidge says, yeah, a nexus. That's exactly what it is. And now that there's a hole in the Black Lion's piece of the nexus, it's releasing all kinds of strange data, things I can't even begin to decipher. And it starts displaying all these kinds of symbols and stuff. And Pidge says, whatever it is, access to this nexus could change the entire way Voltron works. So who else do you think would want to get their hands on that type of information?
Wade, Mayhawks.
Mayhawks, right.
Yeah.
So Hunk says, is that a good thing? Pidge says, I guess we'll find out. And then they show inside Voltron's chest again, the nexus with the damaged black part.
Yeah. Do you remember when you first saw this? I mean, this is 11 years ago now.
Yeah.
But when they show, and at the end of the episode, when they show those 5 pieces of the nexus, we'd seen them all the way back from the very first episode. When they formed Voltron, you saw these little pieces, the points of a star come together, and each one is the color of a distinct lion. I just thought it was just some visual cutaway to give the impression that Voltron is coming together in some powerful, fundamental, weird way.
Yeah.
But to actually see those as plot points or story elements was very surprising to me. Did it surprise you, or do you remember?
Well, I mean, it's sort of like in the old days at Defender of the Universe, when the things used to light up, right?
Mm-hmm.
After they put the keys in and everything, right?
Yeah.
And then they'd form Voltron, but you never got to see the inner workings of things. And this is actually inside the chest.
Yeah. And this is where that's all revealed. Before then, I thought, well, maybe there's some readout screen or like a computer monitor in the lions that shows this happening as some symbolic way that to show the Voltron, the robots assembling.
No,
but these are physical things. Yeah.
And this is something the pilots themselves do not see when it happens.
Right. And that was never clear until this episode. And it's kind of cool that it became part of the actual story. I did write an article a while back on lionsandpilotsandbots.com about the Nexus pieces and going way down ridiculously into crazy details about questions. You know, for example, when do the pieces come together? Do the lions have to link up and then these little pieces travel into Voltron's chest? It sure seems that way. If they change centers, do all the little pieces go back into their little lions and then they come back together, or do they just, in the show it shows them swirling around and then they just mix up in a different way? If that failed, changing centers, and the lions all came crashing to the ground, would the 4 lions be dead effectively because their nexus parts are still in the chest of the black lion? You know, it's just ridiculously detailed stuff, but that's just how I roll. So
but for future episodes, though, we're going to be using that word nexus quite a bit, aren't we?
Oh yeah. And they will use the term interchangeably to refer to the combined 5 segment element that we see with the robot, but they'll also use that term to refer to each lion's piece of it. So it gets a little bit ambiguous as we go forward, but you know, just hang on. It's a good ride.
But also, hang on, because Voltron doesn't get fixed right away.
No,
this was some pretty good damage that Wade gave to Voltron.
Yeah. So what do you think of the episode then?
Well, like I said at the beginning, this is a pivotal episode because it changes things a little bit. Mm-hmm. They've captured Wade. What does that mean? What does that mean for the Galaxy Alliance? How do they get it back together without Wade controlling it anymore?
Yeah, good point. Will we find out?
Yeah.
I guess we'll see.
And then also, you know, the fact that you saw the Lion Riders came back and helped them, and Manset helped them. So you're seeing the the Voltron Force has a bunch of friends now that they can count on. And that's always a good thing to know.
Yeah.
But then, if Wade's out of the picture, they really only have one focus from the big bad standpoint, and that's now Lotor and Mayhawks.
Right.
So what's next on that horizon? Because the last thing that happened with them was the Predator Robeast that they weren't able to defeat.
Yep.
And now they've got a broken Voltron.
Whoops.
What happens if they get attacked by Predator Robeast again?
That may be a bad thing.
They're in big trouble right now.
Right. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of about what happens next. This episode sets a lot of fun stuff up. I also think just the sheer action adventure aspect of this episode was a lot of fun. And as much as I kind of poked fun of different pieces and parts of this episode, on the whole, it was a heck of a ride.
Yeah. So there's some things like when they fall from that height, how do they survive?
Yeah.
But other than that kind of stuff, yeah, this was a good episode.
Yep, I agree. A lot of fun.
Yeah. So what we saw a little infighting between the team, between Alora and Lance and Keith. We got some backstory on Karan and Wade. We saw some powers that Wade was able to drum up from Voltron that we hadn't seen before, like that whip. And then we learned a little bit about Voltron himself with the fact that his mission is to be the defender of the universe, but his spirit is constantly evolving. And then just Vince himself, he has grown through this episode.
Right.
I mean, if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have been able to do anything.
That's true.
It was all Vince.
Yeah, but then the combining of Vince and Daniel's Voltcom powers may offer a hint at things to come as well. So there's a whole lot going on. Yep.
Yeah, this opens up a lot of things. So yeah, so we're looking forward to it. The next episode we're going to review is called Inside the Music.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
So that's it. Thank you for joining us for this episode review of Clash of the Lions.
All right, that was fun, and it was fun to discuss some Voltron news going on too, with new merchandise and all that good stuff.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see some more things coming for Voltron.
Yes,
and we'll continue on our episode reviews of Voltron Force.
Sounds like fun.
So we'll see you all next time on
Let's Voltron.
Let's go.